Welcome to the NOSA Unleashed podcast, where we want to expose and remove the stigma surrounding mental health by discussing real-life challenges and obstacles that keep us paralyzed and fearful to move forward. Let us inspire you to believe there is more to life than what you are currently experiencing. Now is the time to end the silence and pursue the path to purpose and fulfillment. We will do this together because no one stands alone. Welcome back to the NOSA Unleashed podcast. I'm Laura Burgoyne, joined here with my sister Connie Blackwood as we continue our conversation about pride. And today we want to talk about the damage that pride causes in our life, and not just only our life, but the lives of others in our spheres of influence. And we don't always recognize the damage. And, like I shared last time on our podcast, I didn't recognize how damaging my pride was until I was on the receiving end of that pride, that exact same pride. And now knowing that, knowing how painful and all the damage that it can potentially cause, it's really illuminated and opened my eyes how damaging pride is and why it's important that we acknowledge it and we deal with it. And so welcome, Connie, to the conversation.
Thank you for having me. A story that came to mind while you were sharing uh, just that intro for me was when I was in Bible college. And this kind of links back to the entitlement thing. All my life up to that point, I had been, faithfully serving God. And, I volunteered at church so much. And like I poured my entire life into church and God. And so when I came out of Bible college, I expected to be in a ministry position. I expected to, you know, find my husband and start having a family. And none of those things happened. And I was angry, right?
Mm.
And that anger affected my relationship with God, and it affected my relationship with other people. And it allowed this
Mhm.
open door where people who tried to pour into my life, I didn't want to hear. And I didn't even recognize I didn't want to hear it. I just didn't want to hear it because I believed I was right. And it wasn't until, you know, my cousin comes over to my house and she's sitting on my couch telling me how, how great my life is, that I
Mm.
even realized I had this entitlement sitting there. And I said, my life is not that great, you know. And she's like, what are you talking about? And so then I started pouring out all this stuff I expected God to give me and that he hadn't. And she was like, what are you talking about? Your life is so much better than that. And it hit me that these
Mm.
expectations I had of God, these entitlements, actually weren't as good as the gifts he had already given me. But I was
Right,
so blinded by my pride and my anger, I couldn't see it.
right.
And it was damaging relationships around me. It was damaging my relationship with God. And after she said that to me, I was like, okay, I need to fix this. And I started doing Bible studies and stuff like this to get myself back to where I needed to be. And it took a lot because I had to humble myself a lot because I'd put myself so high
Right.
that you have to bring yourself down that much lower, right? The higher you build yourself up, the bigger the fall, and it reminds me of Proverbs 16:18, where it talks about pride goes before destruction and a haughty spirit before stumbling. That fall from that height hurts. It's
Yeah.
not fun, but it's necessary because that's the only way that I would be a person that people want to be around, that people want to
Yeah.
be in a relationship with, right? Like when you're in that place, nobody wants to be friends with a know-it-all. They just don't, because they're constantly correcting you. They're constantly telling you how you're doing it wrong.
Mhm.
People want to be able to live out their story with you. They don't want you constantly telling them how they're wrong. Like,
Yeah.
and you can't, and when you're in those places, you can't just live out story with people. you're constantly in that mode of comparison. You're constantly in that mode of, well, I'm better than you in this way, so I can fix you.
And thinking that we can fix people, that's a scary place to be
Hmm.
because, we only ever know a fraction of what's truly going on, right? And, even sometimes when I've made those assumptions and I found out later how wrong I was, like you said, when you put yourself so high and you actually find yourself in a place of being forcefully humbled, it's a it's a big fall. And, I'd rather now having gone through some of the experiences I've gone through, I'd rather humble myself versus have it happen to me because I've, elevated myself or been so prideful about certain things in my life, right?
Oh, I agree.
And so, you know, that's a scary place to be. One area where I find pride so destructive is in the area of relationships. And, unfortunately right now there's one relationship in my life right now that I think because of pride on both sides, it's unreconcilable. And that is painful. Like, this is a relationship that, in my opinion, should have stood the test of time, right? And I don't feel like I'm coming from a place of pride, but at the same time, I don't know how to fix it, right? Because the other person is walking in so much pride and they're not willing to look at it from anyone else other, any other point of view. So there's no even middle ground, right? And so, what do you do in a situation like that? Right? Do you just kind of, wash your hands and just keep moving on or walk away from that? I don't know.
I think it's difficult. I think that takes a lot of prayer because God, there's some relationships He's led me to restore, and there's some He's told me to let go. And the ones I've let go of have sometimes come back years later when things are different and
Right.
they're like, I am so sorry. And then there's times when I've never heard from them again.
Hmm.
And so I would say take it to God and see what he directs you to do, because he understands where that person's at, and he understands where they are. He knows where we are. And if it's gonna just constantly cause both of us to become more and more wounded, he's not going to tell us to stay in that relationship, because
Right.
it's not going to heal us. It's not going to be fixed, at least
Right.
not in this space. And so sometimes I think the Lord allows us to let go in order for that healing to be able to take place. And
Hmm.
sometimes it never happens, right? Some people do become so hard-hearted and so prideful that they don't ever turn around.
And this is probably equally as bad is like, you know, hoping and wishing someone would have that fall from pride so that they would be humbled so that it could be restored, right? Like,
Yeah, but at the same time, I mean, it's just praying that they would find humility. I mean, humility is a good thing. You're actually looking for their good, not you're not hoping for the pain of the fall. You're hoping for the outcome of that, right? Like you're not wishing them harm. You're
no.
wishing for them to be able to be in relationship again with you. You're looking for them to be able to move forward in life. You're looking
Hmm.
for them to be able to get those benefits they're not getting while they're in that space. So you have to look at it from the correct perspective too. Otherwise, if you're looking at it from that perspective, you're going to be like, well, do I pray for them at all? you know, like
Right.
I don't want to pray for the destruction, but I also don't want to pray for this. Like, how do I pray for this person? Right. So yeah, don't be afraid to pray for humility for them. Don't necessarily pray for the big giant fall, but pray for humility. And if it takes a
Hmm.
giant fall, well, it's not your fault. I
Hmm. Right.
think sometimes we need those falls, though. I don't think I would have been able to move forward in my life because I was definitely stuck in a rut at that point in my life, and I needed the wake up call.
Hmm.
And the fact that it came from someone who, like, doesn't really walk with God and, you know, was also quite a humbling thing, right? Like,
Hmm.
if she's saying this about my life, oh
Right.
my goodness. Like, it was a
Hmm.
really big wake up call because I'm like, I can understand the Christians in my life being able to say this to me, but her, like, God used it in a big way because I needed that big of a wake up call at that point. And
Right.
so I think it's pretty amazing that, God knows what we need when we need it. And sometimes we just need to oh, be receptive to it. And a lot of times
Hmm.
I wasn't at that time because I had elevated myself so high. I was like, I know better than all of you. And that's, I hate admitting that, but it's true, right? Like,
Hmm.
I had, and it carried on from when I was a youth. You're right. It starts when you're a teenager. Start thinking you're right about everything, and it just grows from there if you never get presented with any different thing. And
Hmm.
because I was pretty smart, you know, I was right most of the time. And so it just
Hmm.
actually fed into all of that. And sometimes I think intelligence works against you in that aspect, or it can work against you if you let it, right? Don't allow your intellect to tell you that you're smarter than everyone around you. You can still learn from other people. Because even if
Hmm.
you're book smart, there are still so many other things you can learn. Like, I had to learn emotional intelligence. I had to learn, you know,
Hmm.
social stuff that I had not been aware of, right? Like, I
Right.
just glued myself to people who are willing to be in my mess with me, right? Like,
Hmm.
and that wasn't healthy. I needed people to walk with me out of my mess, not join me in it. But
Right.
I couldn't recognize that at the time.
Yeah. And I think, like you're saying, if we have that mentality, then we really hinder ourselves from growing.
Hmm.
So we should actually be surrounding ourselves with people that are better than us, that are farther along than us, that know more than us, and come with the perspective of I want to glean as much as I can because I want to grow as a person. I I don't want to just, associate with people that maybe are not aligned with where I'm at so that I can elevate myself above them, right? We should always be coming from the platform of, you know, humility and lowliness, saying like there's so much more for me to grow. Like, yes, this is my benchmark now, but I want to keep growing. I want to keep advancing. I want to keep becoming better than what I am now. And the only way to do that is in humility, surround yourself with people that are farther along than you, that are more educated than you, that have more wisdom than you. And in order to do that, you need to come with a spirit of humility.
Or even along those lines, people who maybe are skilled in an area or not that you want to grow into, right? Like, maybe it's not even someone smarter than you or more skilled than you. Maybe it's just a totally different thing that you feel called into, but you know nothing about it. Well, then
Hmm.
follow people who are, glean from people who are. Me and Laura didn't know a thing about podcasting. God called us into it. Well, we started listening to podcasts about podcasting. Like,
Hmm.
we had to learn. It was something that we had never done before and had no
Yeah.
clue of how to do. And so that's even an example, right? Like, I think we need to be balanced though, because otherwise we're also withholding from other people to be able to learn from us. But we need to make sure that we're not doing it in a place where I'm better than you, we're doing it in a place of, I'm excited about growing with you and being able
Hmm.
to see where you go and be able to help you in the way that these people have helped me, right? Because that's still humility, right?
Hmm.
Not, oh, I'm better than you and I can't wait for you to learn something. Like,
Well, and that's funny that you bring that up because in my mentoring, like as I mentor people, a lot of times I do know, I can perceive and I can see what the situation is that a person's facing and what they have to do, right? But instead of coming from that place and saying, "Oh, I know exactly what you're going through. I know exactly what's going on." I've I've taken a different approach and it's like, you know what? And I say to them, I said, "I could be completely off base here. Correct me if I'm wrong, but these are some things that I'm seeing or sensing. And here are some thoughts. You can take them or leave them. Like, there's no judgment. There's no, like, I'm not saying that this is the only way to think about it, but I'm saying this is what I am seeing. And I'm coming from a place of humility and giving them the option of saying, yeah, actually, you're right. And I want to receive that and I want to run with that. Or, they take elements of it and then they add it to something else that they're perceiving, or they completely just reject it whatsoever. But I'm not saying that this is the way you need to do it, right? I'm presenting it as
mhm.
this is what could be what's going on in your life. Does it resonate with you? Right? Because then you're giving that person the ability to self assess and to, not feel like pinned in a corner and feel like, Laura knows everything. And do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Uh, in the same aspect, I feel like God does what gets me to do what he does with me. So when I'm facing something and I'm not recognizing it, God will ask me questions. And then I'm like, as I'm answering them, I'm like, oh, I don't want to answer these questions because it's glaring me right in the face. The thing I didn't see before is now in my face. Like, and so
Mhm.
sometimes I think when I'm with them, instead of just saying what I'm perceiving, God is like, ask them questions. So then I ask them questions. Could this be going on?
Mhm.
Could this be an aspect of what's happening? And then they're like, oh, right. A lot of the time it's like that all of a sudden it's in their face, like it is with God saying, asking me questions, but it's their own revelation, right? And
Right.
I think we grow more when we're actually given those opportunities. Like you said, with me, God asks me questions, and that's how I get my revelation. But God meets us where we're at. And, I think God also brings people along and he gives me different strategies for different people. Like I don't always ask. Sometimes God does tell me to challenge. Sometimes God does tell me
Mhm.
to like just share something. So I totally get what you're saying. But more often than not, he gets me to challenge with questions, which is interesting because that's how he speaks to me.
Mhm. So, what are some other ways that you have found that pride has been damaging in your life?
Alienating people who care about me most
Hmm.
is the biggest. Um, the people brave enough and strong enough to actually come against that spirit of pride and still be like hanging in there with me, even when I'm totally rejected everything they've just said to me. Um, those people, I can't even thank God enough for them because the fact that they were willing to hang in there because I pushed them away hard and they
Hmm.
still stuck in there. And some didn't come back, but those that did, I'm so thankful they did. And without them, I know I wouldn't necessarily be where I am because I know that even when I was pushing them away, they were praying for me. I know that even when I was pushing
Mhm.
away, they were still loving me and supporting me and still being there for me. And so for me, I think it was the fact that I lost relationships that I wish I hadn't lost,
Mhm.
um, because I was pushing people away who were actually trying to help. And I can't go back and change it.
Right. As you were saying that, a memory came to mind because it's actually one of our cousins, and a long time ago, and I had no idea. Like, so sometimes we operate in a way that comes across to someone as might be prideful, and we are completely unaware, and we don't even perceive or know that it's impacted them at all. And that was the case for me. And this was my cousin, and I had left home, and I got busy with life, got married, had children, and really, didn't prioritize these relationships. And it was like 20 years later, and she didn't realize that much time had passed. And I had by this time I had written 2 books, and she had just finished reading one. And I don't think I've told you this, Connie, but she just finished reading a book, and then she reached out to me by Facebook Messenger, I believe, just saying how mad she was at me 20 years ago, how she felt like I had abandoned her, like I had completely dismissed her, and that I didn't care about her. And in my head, I'm thinking, how could she possibly feel that way? And, but when she brought all of this to me, I was just like, I was so humbled, because I was just like, I had no idea that that's what you were feeling. And I had no idea that that was why there was so much distance between us, because I had reached out to her many times, um, and never got a reply. Right. Or if I did give her a reply, it was like, very short and blunt and to the point, and that it was over. And I never really understood why that was happening until she shared with me. And so, in that moment, I could have been prideful and said, well, you're totally wrong. Like, that's not what happened. That's not, I didn't reject you. Like, all these things, like, that's all up in your head. Like, you created distance between us all these years out of a wrong perception, right? Like, I could have come from pride, but instead I was just like, I came from a place of humility, because I was like, I had no idea, right? I'm sorry that you felt that way. I'm sorry that that's how you took that situation and that thing. And I'm actually grieved that it's caused us to become so distant, right? But there's a lot of times in life we don't even realize the damage that we've done, because we don't know that we're operating that way.
Mm-hmm. Well, even if you listen to the podcast, even like the incident that happened just a few weeks ago with at church, right? I
Mm-hmm.
think if I had just kept it to myself and not talked to you about it, it could have festered
Right.
and grown into something more. So I think
Right.
even having you as my accountability partner helps, because then I'm like, okay, I really feel like I need to talk to Laura about this. And then I tell you
Mm-hmm.
about it, and then I'm like, wait a minute. Okay, something's not right.
Yeah.
Even talking to you about it, you didn't even have to say anything. You just heard me, and
Mm-hmm.
immediately it did what it needed to do. And I think sometimes if we just let it roll around in our heads, it can drag us further into that pride place. Whereas if we actually talk to someone about it that we trust, that can
Yeah.
be that sounding board, we can recognize it for what it is, right? And so
Yeah.
in that way, she was kind of your sounding board. It was 20 years after, but she was your sounding board because she was able to tell you finally what she was feeling. And she may not have been able to previously.
Well, and you know what the catalyst was, Connie? She
Mm.
said after reading my book, she said she realized there was a lot about everything that she didn't understand,
Ah.
right? And so by me writing my story plainly in my book, she was able to get a different perspective and realize that all of the things that were playing out in her mind about this time wasn't based on, 100% truth, right? Like, it was her perception and how she felt in that moment. And unfortunately, if she could have come to me at that time and said, this is how what you said made me feel, or what you did made me feel. I could have cleared it up right away. But instead, there was 20 years of distance,
Yeah.
right? And even now that we've like aired it all out, like we're still not very close. And I don't
Well,
know, now there's a lot of physical distance between us or whatnot, but I'm still believing that one day we can be close again. But, it's good knowing that that's what happened, right? And be able to try to make it right and choose something better for next time, right?
yeah. And that's the best we can do. Like, we can't foresee everything. We don't know unless we're told sometimes how we've affected other people, especially if we're not actually acting in the way they think we are. We won't
Mm-hmm.
know. And so, like, that's also why it's important. If you've been hurt by someone or offended by someone, calm down, let it,
Yeah.
and get your clear picture of what it is that offended you or hurt you. So you're not going in guns blazing, and you have a clear communication point. Then you go in,
Mm-hmm.
talk to them about it. And if it's somebody that you know you've had hostile reactions with before, bring someone with you. It will help
Mm-hmm.
catalyze the situation, and you're not there alone.
Yeah.
Address the one issue, and if they're hostile or whatever, just you've expressed yourself and let it go.
Mm-hmm.
But at least you've gotten it out there, and there's the chance for reconciliation. There is the chance for healing. Don't let it go 20 years, right?
Yeah.
Who knows? Maybe that hostile person will be like, whoa, okay. And all of a sudden, maybe that hostility will be gone because they'll be able to deal with part of that root, right? Because you've brought
Mm-hmm.
something to their attention they weren't aware of.
Right.
So you never know how God can use those things. But if we distance ourselves, then we're alienating people and we're pushing people away.
Yeah.
And losing people is hard because you know that you had this amazing relationship before and then it's gone. Right? You're like, what
Yeah.
happened here?
Mm-hmm.
Why'd this person disappear from my life? Right?
Mm-hmm.
And it can be really sad if you never get it back. Or if you get it back and it's not to the degree that you had it before.
Yeah. So I personally think the greatest damage that comes from pride is to relationships.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, if we can recognize this and nip it in the bud and uh, come from a place of humility, I think our relationships would be that much stronger. They'll be that much more resilient. Like you said, bringing an issue up when it's an issue, not 10 years later. And, being able to even walk a few steps in, like, imagine that you're in the life of someone else and perceive how they might feel. That helps put things into perspective. So there's something coming up soon that I'm excited about, and it's your webinar called My Way or the Highway.
Oh,
Do you want to
yes.
just give us like a few sentences about what people can expect that you're going to share about and encourage them to come out and join us live on Zoom?
Of course. Yeah, I'll be sharing a little bit more in depth about um, my way or the highway, where how we can get into these mindsets where we think we're right and we're so convinced of it that we just keep going down this path. And we can see that it's not a healthy path, but we're so convinced it has to be right. And the good thing is just around the corner that we keep going.
Mhm. Right.
And so I want to talk a bit about how that path is so deceptive and talk about some strategies to get off that pathway, some strategies to recognize the pathway, and some strategies on how to deal with some of the problems along the way. of that highway.
Awesome. And so that webinar is taking place the first Thursday in October, October 2nd, 7 o'clock. We come on Zoom. And if you want to join us, you can register on our website at nosafoundation.com. And that way you'll be emailed the private Zoom link. And also if you register and you can't make it that night, we will also email you the recording as well as all of the notes as well. So even if you can't join us live, but you want to learn more about this content, feel free to register and we will make sure that you get all of that content. So once again, thanks for joining us and we'll see you next time on the NOSA Unleashed podcast. Bye.
Bye.